Hey guys, and welcome to Fez Airsoft, where today I'm going to be doing a disassembly on this SS4 from Novritsch. Hey guys, and welcome back. If you do enjoy this content today, please do consider liking, commenting and subscribing, because those interactions will help the channel get seen by the YouTube algorithms and help the channel grow. If you use the Linktree link down below, that will take you to all of my socials, including my Discord and my merch store. If you want to buy a hoodie, t-shirt, that kind of thing, massively appreciated. And lastly but not least, if you want to support the channel a little bit more, the join button is enabled down below. 99p a month to be a channel member. That will get you custom videos, bloopers, your own giveaways and that kind of stuff. Totally optional, really appreciated. And I massively appreciate the guys that have done that already, which are flashing up on the screen now. So, last week you've seen me do the unboxing of the Novritsch SS4. This week we're going to have a look at how to disassemble it for repair and maintenance as well, to check that the internals are up to the standard. So, the stock then is fairly easy going, and it is just extend it to the full that it will go and pull down on this tab, and the same goes for putting it back on. So we're just going to extend it all the way out to the end, pull down on the tab, keep it pulled down, and the stock will just come out as simple as that. I'm just going to free the Dean's connector up and out of the way. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to drop out this front pin here to release the upper receiver. So we're going to need some sort of hex head key. I'm going to put this to one side for 2 seconds. Yes, so this is a 2.5 hex head bit. So I'm just going to put that in there. Now the other side of this is a sort of D-shaped one, so it will stay in place, it'll lock against the body, which I'll show you in a moment. I'm just going to push this down and out, or not. So it has got a D shape which will lock up against the front of the receiver to help you take it out. So I'm just going to push a thin screwdriver in here to punch this out. Technically, one way I could, there goes my screwdriver, I could argue that it's a bit of a pain that it was to push that out, but at the same time it's also a good thing that you know that it's holding everything together well compressed as well. So that front body pin's out now, so I'm just going to gently pull back on the charging handle, and I'm just going to pull on the receiver and it will come forward. Now at the back of the gearbox here there is a lug, so I'm just going to pull the charging handle back and up slightly just to get past that, and there we go. That was snug on there, and we can see in there is our rotary style hop unit and our barrel, which is a 6.03 barrel. Now I'm just going to talk quickly about this. This is a 14mm negative thread, so what would normally be the direction to tighten it will release that. It's not group screwed on or anything, and it's just a 14mm thread underneath. If we were to take out these two hex head bolts in here, that would release the whole front rail unit, and that would come off, and there'd just be a typical standard generic airsoft barrel nut in there if you needed to replace that. So we'll have a quick look at the barrel and hop. So I'm going to, it does look like it needs a bit of a clean, which some of the shots were a little bit inconsistent when I was doing the shooting test. That is with the hop fully applied. Now that's quite a bit of adjustment into the barrel. I'm quite impressed with that actually. And to remove the barrel, you just pull this clip out and the barrel and the hop rubber will just come out. Make sure to not lose the, I want to say nub, the tensioner that is in underneath here that pushes down to give it the tension as well. So that's the barrel on the hop unit. We've then got the bolt stop has just dropped out, and that literally just slides right in and clicks in place there. Now to remove the stock tube, we are going to use the included Allen key that came with it, and it just slides down. There's a big hex head or Allen key head bolt down there, as we saw in the unboxing, and we're just going to loosen that off, being careful not to nip or damage those wires. At that point it's free. We're just going to chuck that out. There is a screw, and we're going to feed gently the wire through. There we go. At this point then the sling plate comes off. That is a QD sling plate. to attach QD. There is our wiring as well, coming away from the back. I'm going to flip it over. We're going to undo this with a small Phillips head. I'm going to be honest, I quite like that they've used a Phillips head and not like a dodgy little Allen key or anything like that, or hex head, because that just makes life a little bit harder for everybody. There we go, take that out. Again, making sure that everything is together nice and neatly so I don't lose anything. I can see already that the trigger pin is throwing itself out at me, so let's see which way it's got the teeth in. So the teeth on this pin came out of the right hand side. Should be able to more or less see the teeth on there now. Just put that to one side. I'm going to flip this over, and I'm guessing so all I did there was this little tab here. I just used a screwdriver, couldn't quite get my fingernail on it, just to pull that tab back there, and that releases this base plate, which then literally pings up. So I've got a centralising sort of thin base plate there with the motor adjustment screw on it, which you can access through this hole here. We've then got the black connector is at the front, and the wire comes up the front of the pistol grip, so it looks at the minute, but I'll confirm that in a moment. We've got the red wire there, which appears to come up the back of the pistol grip there, and then the motor. So if you can't see that, it says Shaolin motor. So there is our motor, and just to confirm, the red did come directly up the back of the pistol grip, and the black did come up directly up the front of the pistol grip. So remember that for when you are reassembling or replacing or anything like that. There's no going under the motor and up or anything like that. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a longer Phillips head. Now this is a nice touch. There are actually 4 screws screwed in into this pistol grip to keep it in place. That is a surprisingly nice touch. Now the typical is just 2 in 2 corners, but obviously they've gone whole hog just to make sure that it's as secure as it can be. So I'm just going to remove these. Now there is a difference in length there. Those are the 2 I've just taken out, and as you can see, there's slightly, this one is slightly longer than this one. Now the size that they came out, the longer one was at this back right corner, the shorter one was at this top right corner. Now I'm guessing this bottom left, or what is the front of the pistol grip bottom, is longer again. I'm guessing this is to do with the wiring running, and they don't want to catch the wiring with screws, because it does go, the threads can go back into the, no, so it's just the one that is shorter. The other 3 are all the same length, so please be aware. I'm going to arrange them like that so I know specifically. So there's the shorter one there, the others are long to match the 4 holes. So the shorter one there, long, 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 and then the pistol grip will nicely come off. Again, careful not to rag it. We don't want to tear any wire shrouds or any heat shrink or anything. I want to keep that nice and safe. The pistol grips come off, put that to one side, and then we've just got one more body pin to push out, which just came out happily, and then the whole gearbox will lift out absolutely happy as anything. And there we go. So there is the gearbox itself. So we've got the metal bushings in there. The wiring is all looking really nice and neat. It looks well machined, it looks high precision, looks well oiled. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the quick release spring out. So I'm just going to push it in and quarter turn anti-clockwise. And there is my spring and spring guide. And then I'm going to get my Phillips head in to open up all of this. So again, making sure that I keep the screws in the exact same order, just in case there's difference in lengths. Ads when you're watching this. See, I told you I'd be nice and careful with it. Apologise for the lighting today. I am in a different part of the house, relying on sunlight and a bit of a yellow light fitting to illuminate. So I apologise if the shadows are making anything a little bit difficult. I will try and keep things close to the camera where possible to highlight things better. It is nice to see that the shell is radiused as well, to prevent premature damage from the cylinder against the front of the gearbox there. And obviously we have got some element of reinforcement going off, so I'm just going to lift that very gently. I can see that that is wanting to go with it. There we go. Now I'm keeping an eye out, making sure no shims are pinging off anywhere at all. So there is our look, first look into the Nov gearbox, and the wiring looks nice and neat. The greasing looks well done. It's not just kind of plastered on all over the place. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the compression elements, and we're going to have a look at the quality of the compression in there as well. So I'll drop the, so this is our tappet plate. So this tappet plate is pulled back by this little sector gear here, on as part of the sector gear, and it pulls back. The air nozzle is pulled back with it to allow a BB up into the chamber. This pushes back forward, and then the piston is pulled back by the sector gear as well, which fires forward, compresses air out, comes down the air nozzle and pushes the BB out. The hot rubber then uses a backspin principle from lowering you effectively when you're adjusting the hot rubber, you're lowering, basically putting an obstruction in the way of the BB, so it puts backspin on the BB, and that gives you the sort of lift and longer stretch of it. So that's looking in good condition. This is obviously post doing the shooting videos and everything looking really good quality. A light bit of wear there on the first tooth on the piston, but let's have a look at the compression quality. Now, considering it was giving us like 360, the cylinder head is literally just pinging out. It appears to be a little bit mucky in there. It's like dried up grease. I will clean that and re-grease it before I reassemble it. So there weren't much of a, I will clean all of that and re-grease it actually. So there's some compression but not amazing, and then if I put the air nozzle on, ideally what I should see is that with my finger over the end of that, as I get the piston in, it should literally more or less stop only after a short distance, meaning there's excellent air compression, the air's not getting out anywhere, and it's just kind of freely going. It's, if anything, it's probably going around the actual cylinder head, which is a little bit upsetting. We'll put the air nozzle back on and test the compression there. Now, holding the cylinder head in place, I am actually getting better compression now than I did before. So I'm currently bracing the cylinder head in place with my fingers and holding my finger over the end. Now I'm getting better compression now, which is, you know, means that actually when it's locked in place, it's actually going to be moderately decent. Let's just lock that back in place again. There. Yeah, there we go. So there is good compression. It's just if the piston at the cylinder head is moving too much, then you're not going to get that compression. But I will clean and re-grease this before I put it back together. There is our gear set. Looks fairly standard, nothing overly special, and we've got our ETU there as well for running the system. So I am quite happy with that. So bear with me a second while I just clean these and re-grease them, and I'll be back in a moment. Okay, and we're back, and we've had a slight improvement in the lighting situation as well. So we're going to reassemble this then. So I've re-greased, cleaned and re-greased the cylinder assembly, just to make sure that it runs nicely and not using the dried up gunk. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook the tappet spring onto there. This then is going to hook on this lug here at the front of the gearbox. So this can be a little bit fiddly. I'm going to rotate that round, I'll explain in a second. And the cylinder head is not going to go where I want it to go, so I'm going to have to make it. There we go. So I'm just going to lift that up. So what I did was the sector gear here, I've rotated this around just so it's not pulling back on this and the teeth are not in the way of the piston. The piston has got these two tracks here, these teeth runners will sit in, so I've just made sure that that will sit and run fine. And then the cylinder head itself, there we go, sits on a lug same as this on the other underneath there. So at the minute I should be able to push on that and it should move freely, and I can see that it's running in its little track down here as well, and the cylinder is sitting nicely in its flush holders here. Apologies for the autofocus going all over the place. Now I can see the trigger has been shimmed as well, which means that they've positioned it so it sits nice and it's not causing issues. This is jumping about a little bit, which is perfectly natural, and it will happen. It will go back into place when we reassemble it. So I'm just going to put this down because we're going to bring in the remaining gear. So I've got the anti-reversal latch here. This stops your gearbox unwinding when it's turning over, so it's just going to sit in here, and the little spring should be springy. It's going to sit against this piece here. So now when it's in place, it should be springy like that. Now I'm going to hold it in place, and I'm going to quickly chuck this gear in place. There we go, against the anti-reversal latch. Now this is where we hope to RNGesus that it doesn't explode when we bring in. Fortunately we don't have to put the other half, the spring and the spring guide in. So I'm just going to loosely drop that in place. I'm going to push the trigger block out of the way, wiggle the trigger, try and find a much thinner screwdriver. I was trying to do this, and this is some sort of, there we go, work of art to get it back together. So we've got, I can see that the anti-reversal latch is back in place and all the gears are sat in their correct bushings. The trigger's in place, the nozzle and the tappet plate are moving, and if I look down there I can see that the tappet plate is moving and it's springing back forward, so we are all good. So I'm now going to get the screws all back in place so that we can reassemble it, and I'm just going to go back reverse order through them in the way that I took them out. So gearbox is back together now. So the next phase is to chuck the spring in. I mean, you don't have to do this now if you don't want. You could do this just before you put the stock back on, but it saves hassle later. So that is now back in place. So I'm now going to drop this back into the shell, and that's going to go in and down. I'm just going to position it, drop it back. So this hole and this hole, I should be able to see straight through them both down to the table underneath, which I can. So the first thing I'm going to put in is the trigger pin. Again, just moving it about until you find that position, and remember the teeth were on this right hand side. There we go. I'm going to get the rear body pin, which has the main notch on this side and should be sort of just past flush on this side. Happy days. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring in the pistol grip, and we're going to drop the black wire. It goes in. In fact, I'll tell you what, I'll show you the underside of the pistol grip. There we go. So we've got 3 holes. Our motor goes into this middle hole. Because this is the back of the pistol grip, the red wire is going to go in this back middle, and the black wire will go in this front middle hole. The other 4 little holes are for the screws to go through to retain the pistol grip down to the gearbox. So put that on. I'm just checking that the wires come straight into the pistol grip and they're not compressed under the pistol grip, because I would not want to damage any screws. I'm going to start with the shorter screw, and the motor, it would seem, is trying to get in on this action. So I'm going to start with the shorter screw, which I know came from that top right corner. So it came from this corner here. So I've screwed that in, just make sure it's tight. The other 3 screws are all identical now, so I will still keep them in the right places just to be safe, but it doesn't really matter massively. 1, 2, and last. Done. Next thing, make sure that the black wire is clean up the front, the red wire is up the back. I'm going to drop the motor in. Again, with the red terminal at the back, the black at the front. The motor should be, once it's in, it should be free bouncing up and down. There shouldn't be any heavy resistance. You shouldn't have to force it down. It shouldn't be wedged down or anything like that. If it is, then something is not right and it needs to be addressed. So even once the wires are on, that should be free moving, and it is. I'm then going to bring this motor adjustment set in. Again, that's springing freely. We'll put that down, and the latch has already clicked back into place on me, so I know that's locked and secure. So we are nearly there. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in the mag release, spring on the other side, drop in the button itself, tighten that down. There we go, get in there. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring back in the upper, so I'm going to put the bolt release in there initially. I will adjust it again in a second. I'm going to drop the top and barrel assembly back in. Again, should be nice and springy to keep it compressed against the front of the gearbox. Now just flick the body so that the bolt release opens up a little bit, comes out towards me. That's a good thing. This is quite a snug fit, which is not a bad thing. The hop goes into the front of the gearbox. I'm going to lift the charging handle back and up to get over that. I'm going to lift the charging handle back and up to get over this notch that we can see here, and then that will allow it to come back. And then it's a case of positioning. There we go. Now that was very stiff going back in there. In the end I had to put the barrel down onto the floor, keeping this pushed that way whilst pushing down as well to get it to go into position. So just be aware that that is a very stiff and tight fit. And then I'm going to push the front body pin through, which helps to make sure it's lined up, and obviously the D shape matches the straight there. This side then should be easy to just screw back in. There we go. Bring a hex head or Allen key head 2.5. Tighten that down. There we go. Next thing then is the stock itself. So bring the stock tube in, feed the wiring down. Again, making sure that the wiring goes into this gap here and it isn't getting nipped. In fact, do you know what? Come on, Fairs, what have you done? Well done those of you eagle-eyed amongst us that were screaming, "You forgot the sling plate, Fez." I realised. There we go. Then this can go on. There we go. Right, so now the next thing is I'm just going to get the screw back. I'm going to put it on the end of this long Allen key hex head bolt that came with it. Slight interruption then, phone overheating in the summer heat of 2022 in the UK. So what I did was turned it up on its end, and I used the bolt to just rotate it so that the flat part of the retaining element lug for this was flat across there, so the wire has a nice run through and in. So tightened all down, happy with all of that. So all we do is feed the wiring back in. The stock then goes back on. We seat it where it was, or where we want it, and that's it. We have fully disassembled and reassembled the Novritsch SS4 for repair and maintenance. I hope that you found that useful. I've enjoyed that. I have actually been quite impressed with the general build quality. The lubricant in the compression section, I'm not sure what they were thinking there or what was going off, but easily fixed. I've just sort of cleaned it out and re-lubricated it with some air seal oil, and it's absolutely fine now. Other than that, really solid. Some good choice in there. The 4 screws in the bottom of a pistol grip and things like that mean that it's less likely to break a pistol grip or anything like that. So I've been really happy. So after I finished filming, reassembling and everything, went back to chrono it again just to check everything was still good and what have you after I'd sorted out the re-greasing the cylinder, and noticed that something had fallen out of the trigger slot when I was pulling the trigger. The Mosfet still booted up, it still buzzed the motor to indicate that it was powered up and everything, but I noticed that this little thing was basically blocking the trigger returning, and when I wiggled the trigger about, this fell out. So instantly I was like, that's not good. So I've then opened up the gearbox, restrict it back down, and this little thing here, which is kind of like a part of a micro switch, which I'm guessing is from this little circuit thing here, actually detects the trigger being pulled. It's falling apart, basically just falling apart. So I am not overly impressed. So post doing the disassembly, reassembled it, went to test it and pulled the trigger. Nothing happened, just the Mosfet beeped, it did its noises, but you pull the trigger, nothing happened. Tried it a couple of times, couple of batteries, stripped it down, and I'll put a little video clip and a little picture on the screen now to show basically these little bits came off, just appeared. One of them, as I was sort of dismantling and pulling the trigger a little bit just to see what was happening, got a little bit crunchy, and basically these bits, which are detect the trigger, just straight up have come off the Mosfet, just fallen off the board basically. So contacting customer services, which took me at least 2 attempts to get hold of them and get any reply. They did explain that it's to do with the SR5 being released and that they're really busy from that, which I can, all right, I can, yeah, okay, that's fine, I'll go with that. But it's taken me a good couple of weeks to get any sort of resolution to this, and I just felt like it just wasn't quick enough to get some sort of resolution with this. I've not had some of the issues that other people have had, that they've just accepted that, you know, because I've offered them the video files and things, that, you know, it's broken, and offered me a replacement part, basically, and that's it, a replacement part, which I'm pretty happy with. So it's taken sort of just over a week to come via UPS. Thanks for that, UPS. I'm still waiting for my other parcel to come, but never mind. So we're just going to install this now, basically, to get things up and running. So just to show you on here, I'm going to be really delicate with this one. Delicately pull this out. So effectively the part that broke is this little, hopefully get the quality in there, this little switch right here. This little switch right here that basically detects the trigger movement, and that it just fell off in several parts. So let's get this open, replace this Mosfet, and hopefully that's everything resolved. Don't remember if I did the air nozzle or not. So the air nozzle size is 10.69 millimeters for the air nozzle size, depending on where you want to gauge it. I'm going to go with the very tip, the very end, so I'm getting that reading for the air nozzle. So I've now removed the Mosfet, so it was mounted down via this hole here, and hopefully, so this silver ring here is where there was like a clear, a clear washer like that. There was also the screw going through it. Now you can see here, this little switch here is what should detect the trigger. Here it is on the new one. It's actually in place. You can see it there, actually in place to detect the trigger. So we're going to just screw this down and back in the exact same place now, just to get this sorted. So I've screwed the Mosfet down, and before I finish routing the wires and everything, what I've done is drop the sector gear in, and I'm just listening for, hopefully you can hear that click. That click is this little switch being engaged by the sector gear. So obviously check that that's engaging, so you know you've got it in the right position. To be fair, it was pretty good at self-centralizing and locating itself in place. So I'm just going to run the wires and show you what I've done. So just run the thin red wire down, and it hooks under this little latch here. So I've made sure that it's nice and secure, and I just keep sort of pushing this down just to reinforce that it should be down and get it to settle into that position. And then the return red wire will just drop straight down and out through the bottom like that. Next I'm going to run this black wire that goes out to the battery connector, and then lastly the other black motor wire. So what I've done is I've used the old Mosfet as a guide just to loop these wires round here and then down through their tracks. So we've got the black motor wire coming down and out there, and then we've got the other wire running down at the back and out to the back of the gearbox, and then it's just a case of basically now just reassembling everything and putting it back together. It's important that these wires stay out of the way of this gap here, because this is the trigger mounting point, one of two trigger mounting points, and then this gap here, because that's where our trigger pin comes in to help hold and locate the gearbox. So it's back together. I'm just going to screw it shut. I was finding that the tappet plate just keeps jumping up and out of its track, so that was an issue to me, but it's all in there now. It's all happy, it's all fitted together. So I'm going to screw it all back together now and reassemble everything, and then we'll come back in a second and hopefully it's fully working. So what I've decided to do is, now it's back together, I'm just going to plug the motor in and the battery and just make sure that the trigger pull does actually work. Otherwise I'm emailing back to customer support. So motor on, listen for that jingle, buzz in. That's fine. So it did work. Let's just disconnect again. It's giving me an error code because it's not detecting the movement in the gearbox, which is fine. So know that the trigger is at least being detected. So I can continue the rest of the installation. So now it's to the point where I've rebuilt it enough to test it fully. Just a word of caution, it was a little bit tricky to get the wires back in again with that centralising fin. That was a bit of a pain. It just literally just took time moving the wires about. We've got the beeps, safe, semi, full auto. So it is back working again, as I am sure you'll be very happy to have heard that going off like that. So I can finish the reassembly now, and I'll show you that in a second. So there it is, fully reassembled back together again. A little bit disappointed, to be honest. Out of the box, I thought it shot great, thought it would perform really nice. Not convinced about the value for money overall. the ETU, I just think the switches on there just look quite soft and weak, and are probably going to break fairly quickly without any real challenge or issue. The other thing I would say as a point of note, when I was reassembling it this time after the Mosfet had gone in, trigger pin and body pin go in, then I would put the stock tube on, because when that tightens down, that pulls these two tight, otherwise they just fall out. Now, it could be that the impact of me tapping the pins in previously or something like that has maybe caused the vibrations, caused the switch to fall off. It shouldn't, but it could have been. But I would advise, I believe, that if you put these in, they will just drop in. Then put the buffer tube on, then put the pistol grip on, and it will pull them tight, so they won't come out now. They are solidly in there. So it's just a point to note from that. So I hope you found this useful. I hope you found it interesting. Ads, this is now coming home to you, so look forward to that. Please do remember to like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you guys later. Bye.